Hi, this is Anna Imagination. My name is Anna Sunshine Imagination, and welcome to Shifting Perspectives. I just had the best conversation ever, and it was this massive, eye opener of just what the fuck am I doing? If you are new to my channel, I am a philosopher, psychologist, sociologist of 30 years, and I believe in magic. So here's what happened. I spoke to my very first person who is like me. And it's been really, really alone, like really alone. And I was talking to her and she said to me, "Are you just coming out of isolation or something?" And I went, "Isolation? What else is there?" 43 years of being absolutely isolated from other magical adults. Now, she doesn't like to use the word magical. And I don't know how else to explain it because the words aren't there. There's a lot that's just not there. And talking to her was like this massive eye opener of just, oh my God, I have been so isolated. So, all of my work, all of my research, all of my findings is 100% completely independent of all of the other energy sources because I've been so isolated. And I went the route of philosophy, psychology, the sciences, physics, and sociology until I got up to the Bible and went, well, what the hell is this doing here? And then I went, oh my God, this is part of it. And then I went further than the Bible, and then it opened up into, well, emotions and psychology is physics. And then I started to look into emotions, and perspective psychology is my forte. This is a perspective philosophy and perspective psychology. So when you study any of these things, there's the book stuff, what you get in textbooks, and then there's the professions, and then there's the research department, and then there's where I am. And that's it right there. I do the research and I basically expand on the knowledge into the next level. So I'm not just a psychologist. I'm not at all. What I am is I do the research and I combine it with philosophy, physics, and then I create something new. It's a new cocktail. That's where I am. So all of my work, though, is completely independent because I've had absolutely no other energy walker, ethereal walker, or energy reader to compare everything to. Now, those are my words. I've had to create like a whole new language just to communicate a lot of this stuff because there's no words for it. And the best we've been able to come up with over the last 2,000 years is the word magic, which actually means wisdom or wise person. And it has etymological roots located in the Middle East. So that's where the word magic comes from mage, from magi, from magician, which is the Arabic, like old ancient Arabic word for basically wisdom or wise person. And then the trail goes cold because Christians burn books, and there's nothing after that. There's a lot of roots to Zoroastrianism, which is it is the oldest documented living religion today. The oldest living religion is Zoroastrianism, which is located around Persia. Now, if you are familiar with Christian lore and myth, it is the three wise men. It's that religion. That's how old we're talking. And their mastery, the Zoroastrians, their mastery was in astronomy and astrology, which is why they were following the star Comet, is because they were already studying the stars and the patterns. So those people were referred to as wise men or magi, magician, magic. And basically, because it was unknown, they just slap a huge X over it and call it the unknown, which is contributed to our story sickness, where if we don't have information, we plug it in. Story sickness is a psychological term I came up with to basically plug in assumptions, exaggeration, and probable fiction. Every time we are in a situation where we don't understand something in the past, exaggeration, something in the future or in the present, assumption, or something in the future, improbable fiction, we plug in all of these stories to help us understand because we cannot have a gap of understanding, a gap in our understanding. To have a gap in our understanding creates a problem with our perspective processing and our psychology and our cognitive core. And when that happens, it leads to mental illness. So it's almost like a self-preservation of if you're in a situation where you can't get additional information, we create these stories so that we don't have a gap in understanding, so that we keep functioning. Understanding and remembering are the leading causes to mental illness. We must understand and we must remember. And if we don't, that's when you get all kinds of cocktails when it comes to mental illness. I don't like to say mental illness. I prefer saying behavioral disorder. Anyway, all of that aside, so I speak to this woman. She's wonderful. And she's basically an ethereal walker as well. And it was this between being an energy reader and an ethereal walker, it's absolutely extraordinary. And when I did all of my research, I got to this point where I went, okay, so my sciences and my logic have led me to this point. And if I follow the logical deduction, we're gods and we forgot that we're gods. Occam's razor. And I'm looking at it going, yes, but toxic limiting belief, magic doesn't exist. Well, who says magic doesn't exist? And I look over at the fourth perspectives and I go, well, those guys, conformists, say, well, since when do we ever listen to the conformists? Well, we don't. Exactly. So, ergo, consider the source. Okay, so let's assume for a minute that magic does exist. The reason why I'm referring to the word magic here is because there's really no bulk understanding. So if I were to toss aside the word magic and actually look at the physics of it, we're talking about energy. And thank you, Einstein and Tesla, everything is energy. Absolutely, everything is energy, which is why I refer to it as energy reader and ethereal walker. And my conclusions basically led to us being dimension walkers. And that's what this is all about. We're dimension walkers. Now, the more I studied imagination in psychology and philosophy and in physics, the more I realized that imagination led to perspective, and perspectives are just alternate dimensions. And well, there's a whole lot more there. And that's pretty much what my podcast talks about. But all of this, I was basically catering and I was basically directing all of my work toward, well, a bunch of conformists. And that's where I kept shrinking myself. And this is really what it is we have this habit of shrinking ourselves. ADHD is just severe energy shrinking. I have a whole lot of explanation about how it's tied into PTSD. I explain this in other videos. I'm not going to get into it here. But when you shrink yourself so much, you end up shaking and you end up with ADHD. It's because you have shrunk so much of your energy and your psyche because the abuse from PTSD has put you in a position where you can't be seen. You're afraid to be seen. So you shrink yourself. But when a god shrinks themselves, it basically condenses their energy into a ball of condensed energy. And that's why you see people with ADHD who are walking, pacing, excess of energy. They can't siphon their energy. It's because they've shrunk. And you're not supposed to shrink, you're supposed to put it out. I hypothesize that if you get the right amount of energy healers with someone with ADHD, they can reverse the effects of ADHD by releasing and cleansing the chakras and allowing the chakra energy to flow outward instead of inward. I believe that is where ADHD comes from. So after talking to her, it was this massive supercharge of just validation. That's really what it is. I walked away from this conversation with this massive amount of validation of going, I know what I'm supposed to do. And I've taken my healing garden several times now and I'm like, okay, the niche is wrong. The message is wrong. And I found out that I'm up against this massive societal expectations still of, oh, magic doesn't exist. And I'm finally just closing the door on that, saying, you know what, that's a toxic belief because my logic leads to the conclusion that magic is real. Let's call it something else. But for now, let's just say magic. But magic is real. Magic does exist. It's in the form of energy. And there's more than enough evidence in physics to prove all of this. And that's where my work led me. So I'm looking at this going, okay, so magic is real. Magic does exist. And I've got all of this massive knowledge on psychology, philosophy, and there is so much perspective in magic abuse, nonconformity abuse going on, that these people who have the ability, like I do, to see, to envision, they can tap into that energy. And you've got a lot of concrete thinkers who are going, oh, well, if I can't see it, it doesn't exist. Well, that's your perspective. Just because you can't see it, you can't feel it, doesn't mean that I can or can't. And there was so much abuse for so long on people who can tap into the energy. And as a result, it shut them down. So my focused energy now with the healing garden is going to be targeted toward that particular person, the nonconformist who basically seeks recovery and healing with their energy. Now, I personally experienced this where when I went into therapy and I started talking to psychologists and therapists about my situation, I got a lot of naysaying back of, you need to really put away your imagination because that's dissociation. Literally, they said this to me. And it was basically more perspective abuse is what I was getting from psychologists. So that's something that I don't do. That's something that's not absolutely not something I'm going to be doing. Is basically it's an openly, yes, let's absolutely heal your magical skills. Let's heal your energy. Let's heal your ethereal walking. Let's get you to the next stage. Let's open your third eye. So it was just horribly validating. It was just so warm, and I connected with the energy. I feel like we're just these constant rods of energy, and we're isolated. At least I felt isolated. And when you come together and you tap into the connection, it's literally like waking up. And I maxed it out to the point where I'm like, okay, I'm not getting anything on this playing anymore. Like this playing is useless to me because I'm just not getting anything from it. And I had this massive starvation of needing to connect. So I was going on dates, I was trying to socialize, I was meeting with people. And the more I was doing all of this interaction, the more it was just leaving me flat, going, this is not the right connection. I speak to this woman and she immediately connects her energy to mine. And I'm like, there's the relief. There is, so I feel supercharged. I feel connected. I feel like I've been fed. That's exactly it is. I feel like I've been fed. So during the conversation with her and then afterward, I'm just like, my brain is buzzing. I started a Facebook page that is called The Healing Garden for Magical Adults. And that's where I'm really focusing a lot of my energy now. So I have so many events that I'm now starting up, and I'm just so excited for all the events because I cannot express to you enough how happy this is. Just I'm doing unlocking your power. I'm doing the calling, where it's basically healing your energy. It's healing. It's taking all of the psychology that I know and combining it with the energy, and it's just merging them together. So it was just absolutely astronomical. And what I'm noticing, this is something I've noticed for quite a while, is everything is a perspective, and it's vital that we preserve our own perspective while also preserving the perspectives of others, it's respecting the perspectives of others while going to great lengths to preserve your own perspective. Now, this is true whether or not you have your third eye open or not. It doesn't matter. Every person really needs to learn how to do this. And this is what boundary setting does, is it preserves and protects your perspective while also making sure that other people's are respected. And if you have somebody who doesn't respect your perspective, get the fuck away from them, because you're going to be putting a lot of energy into preserving your own perspective from abuse. And this is something I really want to focus on, is basically your perspective health. This is definitely a direction I'm going to be taking the garden in, because the more I'm there, the more I'm looking at it, the more I'm going, I get it. I absolutely comprehend this now. So you have your physical health, and then you have your mental health. And that's been laughed at for the first 150, well, not first. Freud was not the first. Freud was a hack. So psychology has been around since pre-Socrates. That's what psychologists don't tell you. It's nothing new. It's not new. They decided to start the whole thing over with Freud because they're ignorant. If they had studied philosophy, they would know that psychology is just a branch of philosophy. It's not new. It's like 2,000 years old. They decided to start the books and the research 200 years ago. If they had just studied philosophy, they would have all the data. So basically, mental health is not new. It's 2,000 years old. And then from mental health, you have your perspective health. Now, mental health is 100% a consequence of physical abuse and perspective abuse. Perspective health is your imagination health, it is your dimension health, it is your energy health. It's where your energy comes from, is your perspective health. Energy health is a whole nother creature. I do perspective healing. That is my forte. So I don't do energy healing, and I don't do mental health healing, because mental health is actually kindergarten level of what I do. There you go. This makes sense. So mental health is kindergarten version of what I do. Perspective health encompasses all of it, and it takes it to basically the philosophy edition of mental health. So perspective health is my forte. And perspective health is basically the entire thing inside of your mind that gets abused, that gets ripped apart by other people when you present it. There is this common practice that's been there for thousands of years, where you have your perspective and then you put it out there for people to examine or play with it or learn. And it started off as just our story. And we used to share our perspectives around campfires in the evenings when we would tell stories. We're sharing our perspective. And it used to be respected. At some point, it became a practice of agreeing and disagreeing. Well, that's not right. That this one is right. And people would take their perspective, lord it over a hierarchy, and cram it into your perspective. Now you have perspective wars happening. And the perspective wars lead to perspective abuse. It's gotten to a point now that all of the perspectives are thrown away. Now you're expected to only have one perspective, which is the same perspective. It's like somebody somewhere stepped up and said, we all have to have the same perspective. And if you don't, we're going to beat you until you conform to the one truth. And that's the problem. The only thing, and I talk a lot about truth, but the big thing that we're really ignoring or we're not mindful of is that a perspective is literally the entire hardwiring core of your logic, your truth, and your story. To tear it apart, to lose it, is to create mental illness. That is how dire our perspective is to our overall health. You mess around and you tamper with someone's perspective, somebody tampers with your perspective, and your mental health takes a huge dive. It's absolutely vital. Now, somebody comes along as an energy reader or an ethereal walker, and suddenly their perspective is ripped apart, and it's their imagination, their perspective that's under attack. And what ends up resulting is a whole lot of shrinking, a whole lot of abuse, and a whole lot of survival. It completely takes it outward. And for people who, like me, are tuned into the energy, tuned into ethereal walking, when they are confronted by people who can't see it or can't know it, they become significant abusers to those who can see it. The first one is where we're called crazy or insane. And it's all because we feel and we know, but it's the taboo, we don't talk about it. Well, I don't have anything to worry about anymore. I don't have anything to be afraid of. So I'm out here talking about it now, saying, look, we're all aware of it. Either you're aware of it or you're not. I don't like the word awakened because to me that breeds prejudice. I don't like the word awakened. This is a remembering. We all have amnesia. Bottom line, we all have amnesia from somebody who had multiple personality disorder, who knows what it feels like to have parts of your alters broken off and then integrated. This is just another integration. This is just basically, we all have multiple personality disorder. We all have amnesia, and we all have rejected a massive, huge part of ourselves and suppressed it to the point of not remembering. So this is just an integration and a great remembering. And people are starting to remember, or they're rejecting it because they have the toxic belief magic doesn't exist. Magic isn't real. Yes, it is. It's extraordinary. So I don't like to use the word awakened because it implies that the people who haven't remembered yet, haven't healed yet, are unawakened. And I don't like the condescension that just, it feels negative. I don't like that feeling. So I'm going to be covering several things that are coming up. This is basically an announcement where I'm going to be announcing what I'm doing. I'm going to be focusing on the importance of emotions and how emotions are physics. And yes, they are. You've heard of kinetic energy. This is emotional energy. And it actually is parallel to the laws of physics. It's extraordinary. Emotions are basically the energy power used. It's our emotional energy that is to be transferred over to siphoning skills to awaken, to remember. So emotional energy is going to be a massive part of this. In addition to emotional energy, you're also going to have the self-sailing system. That's what I refer to with your identity, your intuition, and your conscious awareness. Your identity, your intuition, and your conscious awareness. When you combine those three things, that actually leads you to the God code. And the reason why is because you're starting to tap into your identity, your imagination, what you want, and that is your perspective. Your intuition is the energy pool telling you and directing you where you need to go. And then the conscious awareness is basically you being aware of all this so that you can start maneuvering and managing this appropriately. And when these three things combine, that's when your third eye opens. But in order for you to pull it off, you have to be balanced and aligned with your own frequency. You have to be balanced and aligned with your emotions. And you have to be using your emotions basically to supercharge and build up momentum to propel you forward, just like in physics, exactly like in physics. And then once you have the balance and the alignment, you basically want to synchronize all of this to the moon cycles, which is where I am now, so that when the full moon comes along, you can use it to cleanse yourself of basically energy that doesn't belong to you or frequencies that aren't matched to your actual frequency. Now, I studied music theory for about 15 years. And there's a lot of music theory in here. There's a lot of frequency. This is the physics part of it. This is where physics begins with us. So once you understand how frequency works, how vibrations work off of each other with the physics aspect of it, you absolutely can steer all of this and move it in literally like a ship. Like your whole consciousness, your whole being is a ship of energy that just ebbs and flows with the frequency. And there's a lot more to it. I can see the network. I can see how we are all these grounding rods, and we're supposed to reconnect with the network and then reconnect through the energy. And basically, once we restore the Bluetooth, once we restore our Bluetooth connection, we'll be able to literally tap back into the hive mind. We're supposed to be moving and shifting the entire world through a hive mind, but it became what society said we had to do, which I call the matrix, versus the actual nature's network. So you have, and this is it right there. It's nature's network. And that's basically Gaia, nature's network. Now, there you go. So you have nature's network over here, and then you have the matrix over here. And this is pretty much what is it. It's like a versus. Now, I don't like it to be a versus. I don't like competition. I don't condone it because that's where prejudice comes in. The problem is that's how they view things as. They very much are hierarchy. They very much are competition based. And that's just because they're in the first 4 stages of growth. So their brains are hardwired to compete, to be violent. There's a lot of stuff going on there. And I will be breaking down that later as to so you can understand them and as to the why. Oh my God, I feel like I just unlocked this massive floodgate and I finally understand who and what I am and what I'm supposed to be doing here. Like massive amount of direction. So I'm going to reiterate here on the term magical adult, because this is really where it keeps coming down. There are people who feel they're draconian. There are people who feel they're fae. I'm fae. I'm fae, mermaid, and I'm a changeling. I'm Danu, and I am tapped into the Celtic, Old Norse, and Irish, Scottish, English energy. That is where I am on the earth. That is my yummy places. Now, this is where it gets really, really massive because she plugged in so much for me. So here's how it goes. You have the energy pool. The energy pool spans and wraps around the entire world. No, it's not just the world. There's more, but let's just keep it condensed to our own universe for the time being. So we have this massive sheath of just energy that's wrapped around the electromagnetic field. And I want you to go back, clear your mind, remove all bias. This is really important. I want you to just imagine a time when no words for this existed, where it was just feeling. We were new. We all emerged from the surface, and we were energy that all came out of one area of the world. And then we started to interpret the energy because that's all we had. We interpreted the energy. Over in the Asian, Japanese, Chinese regions, they interpreted the energy, and that is their religion and culture. And over in India, they interpreted their energy, and that became their religion and cultures. And over in the Middle East, they developed theirs. And over in Ireland, Old Norse, Scandinavia, England, Great Britain, they developed theirs. And then over in the Americas, they developed theirs. Now, we are all interpreting the same energy pool, but through different resources. And the reason why the cultures and the religions formed the way they did is because the energy, it's like imagine the energy, the magnetic energy field, the electromagnetic field is an entire physical body. And some people are emerging at the hand, describing a hand, while other people are at the foot, describing what the foot looks like. And other people are at the ribs, describing what this part of the body looks like, while other people are giving a report on what this part of it looks like. Now, no one is wrong. These are all just different perspectives because people are located at different places. So we need to start comparing stories. Every time you meet somebody, and this is it, time passes, the energy recycles, reincarnation occurs where your energy returns to the energy pool and it reemerges somewhere else. And you might come back and say, well, this is it. This is the truth. This is the one God. This is, and you'll tell your story. But I'm not, that you're only interpreting from your point on the map. You are only interpreting from where you are on that electromagnetic field. And that might be where you are, but I'm reporting from Ireland. I'm reporting from Great Britain and Scandinavia. And the energy is completely different up here. The perspective is completely different over here. It's not better. It's not worse. It's just a different point of view. So my energy fuels in from that region. I'm Danu. I am Danu. And I'm tapping 100% into the High Kings of Ireland and the Norse myth. And it's all merged into this solid, oh, this is my vibrational frequency. So if you resonate with that realm, with that story, with that energy, that's where you're going to vibrate with my frequency. But if you're from the Middle East and you are tapped into that energy, it's not going to feel right to you. If you are from Australia or Japan or Antarctica, you're going to have a completely different report going, look, that's not what I'm finding. So it is imperative that we respect everyone's perspective. This isn't I'm right, you're wrong, I'm right. That's the matrix thinking. That is them. We're beyond that. They haven't remembered, they haven't matured yet. And that's really it, is they just haven't matured yet. They're still growing. Now, fear is what keeps a person from growing. Be gentle with them. Be kind, gentle mercy. I cannot emphasize that to you enough. Forgiveness, forward giving, and gentle mercy. That is what they need. Do not allow them to abuse you, but do not abuse them. They require gentle mercy. So we're going to just set them aside. Absolutely no condescending, none at all. We are just at different stages of growth. That's all that this is. So I'm talking to the people who have gone on and matured a little bit more. Those are the people to which I'm referring. Those are the people I'm looking to. And it's this sudden understanding that where we went wrong in the past is the right and wrong argument. Let's all agree on the single truth. We need to adapt. We need to get rid of that. Absolutely. We need to throw that away. If you want to pull from the Akashic records, fine. That's not my truth. I'm going to tell you right now, the Akashic records do not vibrate with me at all. They are not part of the Scandinavian old Irish myth. That's not where I am. Sorry. They're just, I don't even, let me look where they come from. Somebody once told me, and I just, they're so foreign to me. They are absolutely not at all aligned with my Akashic record. Give me the history here. Oh, that's Sanskrit. Well, yeah. I love my etymology and my linguistic studies. As soon as I see the Sanskrit, I'm like, well, that's scant Sanskrit. Yeah, this is absolutely not mine. Oh, not at all. So whenever I look at things like the Star of David, that is not that's so wrong to me. Wrong to me, not wrong in general. Just, it's not my truth, because I'm reporting from Celtic and Ireland and in Norway. That's my truth. Oh my God, those are my yummy places. That's my frequency, because that's where my grounding belongs, is Ireland. When people quote me the Akashic records, it's like, yeah, that's not it. You're going to have people who resonate with Native American energy. You're going to have people who resonate with Australian energy. You're going to have people, and it doesn't matter where you live. That's not it. Because you're pulling from energy. Your energy is, you know this, your energy is much older than this. So when you pull from energy that's from a different culture than what you heritagely or genetically are at this moment, it doesn't matter. So when you figure out which energy is yours, go through all the stories, figure out which ones resonate with you. For me, every time I look at, anyone shows me anything from the Middle East, I go, that is not my energy. Respect for what it is for you, but do not tell me that it's mine, because that's a different story. That's like, okay, so you're reporting from the hand, but I'm over on the shoulder. And that's not, I'm Danu. I am so Ireland, like that's where I'm at. That is absolutely where I'm at. And when I studied the Sami and I heard about the nature, and I went, oh, the nature, that's where I am. Even the word Gaia it doesn't resonate with me. That's why I don't call her Gaia. That's not my frequency. That is her name on a different elbow. And that's it. That is her name on a different elbow. That is not my body part. So really start to wrap your head around the idea that the electromagnetic field, the energy pool, is going to appear differently depending upon which frequency you vibrate at. My frequency is E major. I have plans for this, but yeah, it's God, this is amazing. Like the more I look into this and the more it's all coming together, the more I'm like, all right, you require the omniscient perspective in order to pull this off. Once you get to the omniscient perspective, which is what we do here, like this is the remembering, the more you can basically shift perspectives and move around. So once you learn how to shift perspectives and you can adjust your perspective so that you can see outward instead of, so when you have a perspective, you start off with just your bubble. That's the matrix. They're in their bubbles. Okay. That's actually a really fantastic way of putting it. Let's do this now. So you have your bubble perspective. Okay. And that is basically where you are at perspective 1 through 5. Now, fives might come out, fives might stay inside. Okay. Once you get out, now you have the fifth and the sixth perspective, some fifths and the sixth perspective who are going, okay, I'm at the surface. There's definitely a bubble. And those are the people right at the edge of that bubble, and they haven't broken out yet. The seventh perspective is when you get out and you can look up and you can see the bubble. That's the seventh perspective, is when you can look at the bubble and go, holy crap, I was in a bubble. And then you realize you're on this massive wave of just what else is on here. And you lose all vocabulary because there is no vocabulary to describe being outside of the bubble. And then the eighth perspective is when you basically learn how to communicate and articulate. This is also when you work on your spell work. I really hate calling it spell work, but it's a really good, it's translating it into second perspective for you, spell work. And that's what I do a lot, is there's a lot of things that I'm translating into the other languages for you. So when I say magic, that's second perspective talk for energy walking. And spell work is second perspective talk for referring to the energy field. That's basically using your throat chakra to manifest. I'll just say it. Yeah, you're using your throat chakra to manifest. And what you're really doing when you manifest is you are literally creating the new dimensions. You are creating imagination for new future dimensions so you can walk and pass into those. That's ethereal walking, which I get into later. So once you have all of that understood, then the ninth perspective is when you basically learn respect for others. This is where you get dignity. This is where you get respect, and you understand that your words have significant weight to them, significant power. So you start to become very, very delicate with your words because, yeah, you start to realize their power. And then 10th perspective, 9th and 10th perspective was like 10th perspective. That was the anger. There was a lot of anger there. And the reason why I went through my angry stage is because that's when I realized, yeah, I did not articulate this well. I realized that there was emotional power, and we were taught to suppress emotions. And that's where I was through the ninth perspective, was suppress the emotions. And then with the 10th perspective, I unleashed the emotions and I allowed all the emotions. I allowed anger. I allowed arrogance. I allowed all the emotions. And then with the 11th perspective, I found the neutral control. It wasn't control. It wasn't mastering the emotions. It was, oh, I got the words. Coexisting with the emotions. There you go. So there's this great suppression of the emotions right up until the ninth perspective. And then there's the allowance of all the emotions. And then in the 11th perspective, you coexist with the emotions. When you learn how to coexist with the emotions, that's when the real power begins. That is when you go, holy shit, because then you start to realize that up until that moment, all the emotions that you had were kindergarten toys. And you realize that the emotions are the real power. So that's when you start to realize the massive network. You see the network at the 8th perspective. You see the 12 perspectives at the network. And at the 9th perspective, you become omniscient. The 9th perspective is when you become omniscient. It's when you can stand. It was the 8th and 9th perspective where you gain the omniscient perspective. That's really it. Oh, this feels so good to finally name and just finally put to words. And then you start dealing with, yeah, so it's words and communication, and then it's emotional knowledge, it's emotional IQ, and you get that there at that point. So 6, 7, and 8, 1, 2, 3 is foundational. 3, 4, wait, I'm sorry, 4, 5, 6 is your cultivator. 7, 8, 9 is, excuse me, 7, 8, 9 is communication. And then 10, 11, and 12 is emotions. There you go. So once you have all of this basically coexisting, and that's again, it's you require tolerance. Oh, gender went away at the 8th perspective. Uh, Gender stops at 7 to 8 perspective. That's when you start to realize that gender becomes so irrelevant, like a race. So that by the time you get to the 10th perspective, everyone is the same gender. But then at at the 11th perspective, you realize that there's 3 genders and we are all variations. Each person is a variation of all 3 of those genders. And they move and they shift and they ebb and they flow. And suddenly masculine, feminine cease to exist. When I hear someone talking with a masculine and feminine, it immediately tells me, oh, they're in the 6th perspective or lower. Because once you get into the 7th perspective, you stop seeing masculine, feminine. Once you get into the 8th perspective, it hurts you. Those terminologies hurt you. And once you get into the 9th and 10th perspective, you're in a whole nother plane of existence where you're a luminal, male or female. And like I said, we're variation of that. So one day you might feel more nurturer, provider. And that's what it is to me, is nurturer, provider. And then luminal, which is neutral. And if you look at a molecule, it's exactly that. It's positive, it's negative, and then it's neutral. So, and that's when you start to see the physics of it, where it's all positive, negative, and neutral. Oh my God, this feels so fucking good to finally articulate. So that's pretty much where I'm at. Is I'm at a point where I'm done placating the conformists. I'm completely done. Like I had periods and steps of this where I went, I'm done with it. Now I'm really like, I'm coming all out. I'm not going to wait until the evening where I'm finally relaxed enough to tread open. Now I'm just like all out. So if you identify, and I'm going to use a lot of second perspective terminology on this just to make it easier. Second perspective terminology is magic, it's witch, it's wizard. That is all second perspective terminology, but it's a common verbiage that we all can use so we don't have perspective gap. Perspective gap is when we experience a communication breakdown between the different perspectives, which is why we have so much misunderstanding in the world, is because perspective gaps lead to significant communication gaps. It's not a communication gap, it is. Every perspective has their own language. Listen to this. This is it right here. Every perspective has their own language. And that's why you see different generations talking differently. It's why there's a communication gap. It's why 4th perspectives can't understand 6th perspectives. It's why Republicans can't understand hippies. Is because Republican is a 3rd perspective, Democrats are 4th perspective. Sorry, guys. And some Democrats are 5th perspective. Republicans are 2nd and 3rd perspective. Democrat is 4th and 5th. And the hippie, the conservation or environmentalist, is the 5th and 6th perspective. See how that works? So our government only covers 2 of the 12 perspectives, which is the problem. So I'm going to be borrowing a lot from the second perspective language. That way it's all encompassing and we all can understand it because of the perspective gap. It does not mean in the 11th perspective where I'm talking from, it does not mean that that is exactly what it is. It's not at all. So second perspective. So I'm going to be using a lot of the language from the other perspectives to articulate so people can comprehend. But if you're wanting to know what all this translates to in 11th perspective, basically we're energy walkers, we're dimension walkers. And we are getting to a point where we can tap into our God self and our true, basically we're a bunch of gods with amnesia. That's it. We're a bunch of gods with amnesia. And we got to a point where we ended up with multiple personality disorders. So we suppressed our own God powers inside of us and then forgot that we were gods. And then we idolized and deitized our gods and put ourselves on a pedestal and then said, oh, we have to shrink because we can't be like them. Well, let me ask you something. If we weren't threatening the gods, then why did we have to shrink? If a man cannot threaten a god, then why do we have to shrink? Answer that question. We'll go from there. Anyway, I'm going to go ahead and wrap it up. But oh my God, I have so much information. It's all coming forward. So I'm going to be, I feel really free now, really free. If you love shit like this, like, subscribe, follow, comment below, share this with anyone who you feel could use it. And if you want to learn more about me or jump into my community, click on the link below. Thank you so much. And may the kindest of words always find you.